Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World with me, Hashim Kumar. Last spring, Moldovan customs officials intercepted over 900,000 euros in undeclared cash smuggled from Russia. The funds were reportedly part of a scheme linked to a Kremlin-backed oligarch aimed at undermining Moldova's pre-EU president, Maria Sandu, and influencing the upcoming presidential election and EU membership referendum. Sandu, known for her anti-corruption reforms and pro-European stance, faces significant challenges as Russia allegedly funnels millions to disrupt Moldova's political stability. As tensions rise, accusations of voter buying schemes and foreign interference highlight the broader geopolitical stakes in this crucial election. What can we expect between now and the election on the 20th of October and after the votes have been counted? Well, to discuss this, I'm joined by Vlad Lupan. He's former Moldovan ambassador to the United Nations.
Hello.
Hello, Ms. Lupan, and welcome to TVP World. Thank you for taking the time to join us.
Thank you for the invitation.
A pleasure. So, could you paint for us a picture of how this 900,000 euros fits in to the larger complex of Russian interference in Moldova?
Do take into account that several years ago we already had a plan of Russian interference published in the United States. There was a hack of the Russian data, and one of the Kremlin units was hacked, and this plan was obtained. And this particular interference is just a continued way for the Russian Federation to focus on one of the areas of their interest, Republic of Moldova. That particular area, the Republic of Moldova, was on the attack maps of the Russian Federation in 2022. Whoever followed the events when Ukraine was attacked saw the map and saw the fact that Moldova was also under the vector of attack. So Russian attack would have been already targeting Moldova. Moldova is an important element for the Russian Federation, not because it's a small country. Contrary to that, it plays more of a psychological part of the former Soviet Union and the restoration of their influence. But it is also important today as a leverage against Ukraine if, of course, the government fails to win the elections next year. And if Moldova, for example, votes to join the EU this year, then of course that would undermine Russia's plans with regard to short-term plans and long-term plans with regard to Ukraine and with regard to its influence.
Understood. But Moldova doesn't even share a border with Russia, does it? However, Russia seems to have quite a lot of influence in Transnistria, for example, where it's got about 1,500 troops stationed. How did that happen?
This is a leftover from the Soviet times, those troops. They came and a number of military depots were evacuated from Germany, from Eastern Germany to the Republic of Moldova, and that's how we ended up with the Russian, with the Soviet army and then the Russian 14th Army. That particular army split in two. In 1991 and 1992, they became part of the so-called Transnistrian region that essentially is a Russian enclave, because during the previous years, this particular area was populated heavily by the Russians, brought in after World War II. So at the moment of the dissolution of the Soviet Union, they created the so-called Popular Republic, like you see now in Ukraine, and pretty much a similar war has happened in the Republic of Moldova, except that happened in 1992. Very few people know about it, but that is how we have today the Transnistrian region, and it is essentially controlled by the Russian Federation, even as the Council of Europe, European Court of Human Rights, basically recognized on 3 occasions. We also saw investigations by Moldovan journalists during elections, particularly last elections when pro-European political parties were attempting to win those elections, in which the Transnistrian region, that region has Russian enterprises with Russian owners from Russia, send the voters to Moldova to vote. They basically bust them. They made them responsible to vote the right way for the candidates of the Russian Federation already. So this is not the first time that the Russian Federation is interfering. This is an old story. This is dragging on from the moment of the dissolution of the Soviet Union. They froze a conflict in Moldova with the goal that today seems to be more obvious, and that is the restoration of their influence in the former Soviet state. That's why the Republic of Moldova is important for them. That's how they are able to exert their influence. And also they have political proxies in the Republic of Moldova, usually left-wing political parties, although that is mainly on paper. The left-wing denomination is mainly on paper. They make declarations about being socially responsible, helping people, particularly people in poverty. But the reality is that they have been previously involved in numerous cases of corruption. So
Understood.
whatever money happened before, and particularly sent from the Russian Federation, there have been multiple there was multiple information that this was actually used by them for their own purposes. So,
Understood. Mr. Lupan, now you've laid out quite an array of forces actually lined up against Moldova's free and fair election on the 20th and its application, or the acceptance of its application by the people to join the EU. How robust is the security around both of those, the election and the referendum? Do you think that the Moldovan security services have learned from history how to prevent the influence from influencing the election too much?
Well, it is hard to say how prepared they are now, but they are certainly prepared. And in order to tell you, to prove that, we can easily remember the fact that these very political parties that are attempting to disrupt the presidential election this year, as well as the referendum to join the European Union, which are taking place on the same day, these political parties have been already sanctioned by the US Treasury for malign Kremlin's interference in Moldovan political affairs. So the United States is aware of the fact and obviously is going to at least assist the Republic of Moldova with a more robust electoral system. If we talk about the security of the elections themselves, the second part is the protests by those political parties have been organized already before. And during those protests 2 years ago, an officer of the Federal Bureau of Security of the Russian Federation, FSB, the former KGB, was arrested for coordinating their activities, the activities of these political parties that were attempting to protest and then even organize an overthrow of the government 2 years ago. So the Moldovan security services are also aware of that. The Ukrainian security services actually have warned the Moldovan side about these type of attempts, and then the Moldovans managed to also implement a number of measures and actually caught a Russian FSB coordination, Russian intelligence services coordinator there. And of course, we have to take into account that all of these is already not new and known.
Right.
Of course, the Republic of Moldova is going to attempt to organize itself as much as it is possible, but we don't know what kind of orders Moscow is going to send through its agents to the people there in terms of, will they attempt to disorganize the elections? Will they attempt to block the voting sections, the polling sections? Will they attempt to organize all sort of types of disorder on the election day? That is unknown. So there is one more there is one more element, and that is, of
Understood.
course, the element of police that is going to have to work on that day as well.
Understood. Now, let's assume that against all odds, a free and fair election is carried out. The population votes positively towards joining the EU. How is that going to change the geopolitical dynamic in the region? And what do you think Russia's response is likely to be?
Right. Let's remember one thing, that the Moldovan public, in proportion of about 62%, is in favor of joining the European Union, as per one of the latest opinion polls. This is pretty much understandable. If you look at the evolution of the Moldovan political opinion, that is understandable, because European Union offers to the Moldovan public the opportunity of a welfare state and a rule of law based state and an anti-corruption state, which is basically, this particular government was elected on this mandate, anti-corruption. Right. So there is a relatively high popularity of the European Union, so we expect this referendum to pass. In order to, that will not change the geopolitical situation in the region. That referendum is meant and was organized by the governing PAS party. That's the name of the governing party in the Republic of Moldova, PAS. They have organized the presidential elections and the referendum on the same day, first of all, to spare money, of course. And the second reason for that is to boost the popularity of the party former leader, now the president of Moldova, who is associated with this, who is still associated with this party, because the president of Moldova by law has to renounce its party membership or to suspend its party membership as long as they are the president. But of course, everyone understands that the president is represented by the PAS party, or is the representative of the particular party. We are talking today about the fact that this referendum will pass. And we are relatively certain that this referendum and the popularity of the president will both ensure that she is re-elected and the referendum is going to be passed. But that's not the only point. These are not the only elections. This is not the final goal. The final goal are the elections in June of 2025, the parliamentary elections of 2025. Therefore, the success of this referendum is going to give a preliminary boost to the governing pro-European anti-corruption political party in power. That is the goal. Understood. And the goal is to avoid changing the geopolitical situation in the region, because otherwise, if the pro-Russian parties win during the summer elections, then they will attempt to support Russian Federation and undermine Ukraine. Now that the Republic of Moldova is a very important hub for the Ukrainian goods, exports, imports to Ukraine. Understood. So it is extremely important for the Russian Federation to make sure that actually the final goal, the elections in summer, are undermined. And to do that, they have to start now. They have to undermine these elections. They have to try to undermine these elections, despite the fact that they basically are going to lose them. But they will attempt to undermine.
And then maintain the momentum until the second elections. Now, we mentioned Transnistria, but there is another region, Gaga, who've recently, semi-autonomous region, recently held an election. And Yevgenia Gutsul has been elected in that region, and she seems to be very pro-Russia. How's that going to change the dynamic of this upcoming election?
Yes, the situation in the Gagauz region has been historically difficult, because these are Christian Turkic population, people there. In the 90s, exactly during the dissolution of the Soviet Union and when Moldova became independent, they have requested and they have received, as an outcome of a relatively tense situation, almost a conflict, in the south of Moldova, in that region, they have received an autonomy. So as of Moldova independence, we actually do have a new autonomy in the country. And that is a model that we have attempted to offer. I was a negotiator of the Transnistrian conflict. This is also the model that we have attempted to offer to the Transnistrian region.
Okay.
There, you can have an independence. However, this does not change this does not change the one of the main problems.
Understood.
The Gagauz region is heavily penetrated by Russian propaganda.
Yes.
They're extremely pro-Russian.
Well, we'll have to invite you back to continue this conversation, Mr. Lupan. Thank you very much indeed for your analysis for our audience. Have a good evening, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening. And that's all from us in this episode of World Talks. Goodbye for now.